The City Council Committee on Government Services, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, will hold a committee meeting on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation in accordance with Chapter 20 of Acts of 2021 for the purposes of taking action on the matters listed below. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, on matters not requiring a public hearing, we will post on the Cities of Salem's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Individuals may participate remotely in the meeting via remote participation platform, Zoom. Members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting may access the remote participation meeting through any one of the following ways. Please click on the link below to join the meeting, password 759371. Go to the website link and enter the webinar ID followed by the meeting password above if necessary. By telephone, participants can dial toll-free phone number 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. When prompted, enter the webinar ID 894-6940-1667 and follow the instructions to join the meeting. The City Council Committee on Government Services is meeting to discuss water main breaks in Salem. Present, we have all members of the committee. From the Committee of the Whole, we have Councilors Prosnewski, Riccardi, and Morcillo, and Merkel. We also have with us Dave Knowlton, the city engineer. And I guess before I get going, I just wanted to welcome you all to the first Government Services Committee meeting. Appreciate everyone's willingness to work around these times. I think just being self-reflective on what I noticed in the first 2 years as a counselor, I think that what we got done as a council is not necessarily reliant upon the council president or the makeup of the body, but it's the effectiveness of the committees and being able to find times to meet and get these things out of committee and get them before the council. So I just appreciate everyone's willingness to continue down this path and see what we can do. Because I think there can be a lot that can come out of government services and we can do a lot of good in here and have a lot of good discussion. And also, just before we get going, I just wanted to open it up to see if anybody has any sort of questions about what we're going to be doing in government services or any sort of points of clarification. We can have hearty discussions in here. Just expect everyone shows up understanding what's on the agenda. I think everybody here will. I think you've all been frequent flyers and committee meetings and other meetings before this year. So I think that there's probably a good understanding of what we've got here, but I just wanted to open up before we get started. If anyone has any questions or anything they want to get out of this committee moving forward. And I'll take the silence as a no. Okay, so today we've got Dave Knowlton here with us. We're going to discuss water main breaks in the city of Salem. So I think that the goal is to have, to allow counselors to ask questions. I don't think we have any members of the public in attendance today, but if anybody does show up, we'd like to allow them to speak and ask questions as well. Reminder, questions still do go through the chair, but we can sort of talk to Dave about what we've seen or what his office has seen with water main breaks, whether they've increased or decreased, stay the same, what the causes would be, water usage in the city of Salem. There's a lot of topics out there. I think that there's obviously a lot of opinions about water breaks and what causes them. So I think that this is a great place to start with a fact-based conversation around that. So I guess before we get started, I guess just getting started, I'll ask Dave if you could sort of go over just the state of the infrastructure in Salem right now, what we've seen for water main breaks, what's been happening, what sort of things you've been noticing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good to see everyone. I kind of prepared some talking points based on the council order, so I can kind of go through that. Water main breaks are an annoyance, certainly, disruptors to residents and businesses for sure, and unfortunately, they do happen, and they're not going to go away. I think we're doing a good job addressing them and trying to get to the root causes of them and making improvements where we think it's necessary to avoid future breaks. I think we're doing a good job of getting information out to the public, to affected residents about water breaks. We try and get, obviously, code red calls to the people that are affected by a water break that with a particular outage. And then we go beyond that and we notify residents in the surrounding area about the potential for brown water that's a result of the water main breaks. You know, when you have a break, it sends water in a direction that it typically doesn't go. So that rush of water can change the flow direction of the standard water in the pipes, and that can stir up turbulence. That's a settled, sediment in the bottom of the pipes that typically stays on the bottom, and we clean them out, when we do cleaning and lining, things like that. But you get a break and the water direction changes and the sediment gets stirred up, and you can see that for a good distance away. So we try and let folks know that we have a break in the area, and not to run your do laundry, things like that. If you see brown water, run a spigot in the low elevation of your house, outside preferably, until that water runs clear. The water's safe to drink, but it is discolored or could be discolored based on the break. So we've been doing a good job about that, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons why there's a heightened, not concern, but awareness of water breaks. We try and get information out to people as quickly as we can, and that may be a reason why you are hearing maybe that there's more breaks, or that there's more serious breaks, things like that. They're not going to go away. We do deal with them often. We don't like to. A lot of times they happen in the middle of the night. They happen on weekends. They happen on holidays, cold weather, certainly, and they become a challenge to resolve. But we do resolve them. We have a really good dedicated water and sewer division in DPW. There are 6 people in that, and they come in at all hours. They come in at all conditions. And you can imagine responding to a water break. You get water spouting everywhere when it's cold weather or late at night. It's difficult. It's a challenge, but the folks in the water and sewer division are always there for the most part, and I think we're well served by their efforts. If you look historically over the years, I think the number of breaks have come down. When you look at it's tough to look year to year. Certainly month to month, you can't do that. But if you look at a time period of, back in the 70s versus what's happening now in the last 10 years, there's been a reduction. We do track the breaks. We do report the breaks. We report how much water we think we've lost during that break. And that reporting goes to DEP every year so that they're aware of what we're doing. And they look at our maintenance and operation plans and our standard procedures for water breaks and how we are staffed and the equipment that we have, and they provide guidance if they think there's some things that we could do or have better to respond to things. But back in the 70s we had close to 80 breaks a year on an average. Now we're down to somewhere around 30 to 40 when you look at the last 10 years. Water breaks happen for many reasons. It can be due to the age of the pipe and the material when it was installed. Older cast iron pipes are much more brittle and susceptible to breaks when things change around them, the bedding that they're in, and the freeze-thaw cycle. Freeze-thaw cycles can change the pressure in the pipe. When we get frost in the ground, the area around the pipe freezes, and that causes the pipes to kind of constrict. And then when the frost goes away, the ground warms up, the pipes expand. And over time, based on the age and the location, that can cause water breaks, water to break. We also have ground settlement. Salem has varying soil conditions from ledgy material to peat down near the coast. And that peat material, the poor soils can settle over time, and that can put stresses on the water pipes as well. It causes breaks. We also have corrosive soils. When you're in the coastal area, there's salt water that gets in as part of the groundwater, and that can affect the life of the pipe. That corrosive water can start to deteriorate the outside of the pipe, and over time causes the breaks. We also have a lot of stray electrical current believe it or not, in underground throughout the city, in the downtown areas. And that electricity can corrode the pipes as well, cause them to weaken, and over time they'll break. And then we have areas where the pipe is just not bedded properly that we found. In those ledge areas, you've got to have proper bedding around the pipe when it's installed. You want sand or crushed stone around it. We find a lot of times when we do respond to breaks that the pipe is laying right on the ledge. And so there's no way for the pipe to move. And when it does the freeze thaw, contraction and expansion, that can weaken the pipe and cause it to break. We also have areas where the bedding wasn't the best, and rocks were in the trench around the pipes, large rocks, sharp rocks that can over time weaken pipes. So that's kind of the causes. It's something that we just deal with. We like to minimize it for sure, and how we reduce that frequency, I guess, is that we do this monitoring. We track every break. We track where it is. We track how long it took to resolve the break, to fix it, and then the amount of water we think we lost when that break occurred. Examples of that are the recent projects that we've done. If we see 2 or 3 or 4 breaks over a period of time, and it could be a matter of years, but we will create a CIP project to replace the pipes. We just did it on Francis Road. We had a problematic section of pipe there that was frequently breaking multiple times. A small 8-inch pipe, but it was just something that was very inconvenient to the residents there. And so we just decided to, okay, let's replace the pipe in the street. And that turned into a resurfacing of the road and the sidewalk improvements as well in there. We just completed a project on Highland Ave, which is it's in our high pressure zone. There's a 16-inch pipe in Highland Ave that had multiple breaks, basically from the Mooney Road intersection all the way up to the Pep Boys section. We've been out there a lot. A 16-inch pipe, when it breaks, is very disruptive, and that's the main feed from the pump station up into that whole area of Ward 4 and Ward 3. So we just completed a lining project that out there. We did not dig up the pipe. We actually exposed pits where valves were and where fire hydrants were connected, and we actually lined and inserted a new pipe inside the water pipe that's there to give it extra life and extra support. So that was completed. We also had over the last couple of years, we had breaks on Loring Ave from Dead Man's Curve or Legs Hill Road all the way down to there's a little access road into a pump station where Marblehead has a pump station, and we had a number of breaks there, and we just recently completed a replacement of that. So we got new 16-inch pipe in that area where there's poor soils and corrosive soils right next to the Forest River. And we think that that's going to resolve those issues with that section of pipe. There's more work to do. We're looking at Horton Street. We've had multiple breaks there. That'll be a project that's going to be upcoming in Ward 3. We also have in Ward 5 a section of pipe on Broadway from Canal Street to Loring Ave that has had multiple breaks. There's been some fires there, so there's fire hydrant use has affected the flow of the water and the pressure in the pipes, and that's due to get replaced as well. So we kind of monitor things and we address them as needed and make the repairs. And the city council has been supportive of providing CIP funds to do that. In some cases, we do request additional money from retained earnings if it's a larger break, just requiring us to bring in special contractors to help us do that work. So as far as the break responses, we typically in-house will respond to about 90% of them ourselves, but there are times where our in-house folks aren't available, or it's a pretty complicated pipe, large pipe, a lot of utilities around it. We'll bring in a contractor to help us with that in that case. But in most of those cases, we still have some water sewer division people come in to help, because we understand the system better than any contractor would. We know how to shut valves down. We try and limit the the shutdown that's needed to dig down and expose the pipe and make the repairs. So we're always using contractors on the bigger, more complicated breaks, and then we take care of most of the stuff ourselves. We see larger pipe breaks, which are the 12-inch diameter pipes up to 16-inch in the city. Those are typically the ones that we'll bring in a contractor to help us with. And then all the other things, any breaks from 6 inches, which is the smaller mains that we have, all the way up to 10-inch, we typically take care of those ourselves. There was in the order, there was some questions about basement flooding or property damage, and that's unfortunate, but it really depends on where the break is and what the elevation of the houses are around it. When you have a large break like the 16-inch break on Loring Ave, there are houses that are in low areas. You have a lot of water coming out. It can go down driveways. It can wash out driveways. It can actually get into basements. And we work as quickly as we can to get information out to the property owners that they need to hire a contractor to do the cleanup, service master or something like that, to clean up the basements or whatever the flooding was and repair their driveways. And those costs that are incurred by the homeowner are something that we will accept responsibility for through our insurance and reimburse the property owners for that. Let me see. So how do we minimize it? It's really continuous monitoring, and it's identifying those problematic pipes, and then creating a CIP project to minimize the unexpected breaks in the future. That was all I had about water breaks. I don't know if you want to stop and I can take questions about that.
Yeah, I think that was a very, very, very helpful overview, I think, of just the history of water main breaks and what we've been seeing and what your actions are on your end. If I could ask the first question, just you mentioned that water main breaks have generally decreased. I think it varies from year to year, but I think generally the trend seems to be since the 70s and even the 60s that it's been a general decrease. I think there's a perception among some that that a lot of the new development is causing, or new residential development is causing water main breaks. A lot of our development that we've seen has gone into spaces. It's not open space. It's been going into spaces that were previously commercial or industrial. Have you? I guess the first question is there more water usage? Are we seeing typically more water usage from our commercial and industrial properties than we are from residential? And then second, would you say that just over the last, if you have that data in front of you, over the last 40 years or so, are we using more water today or less water than we were in Salem? Because I know our mix of residential, commercial, industrial has changed significantly since then. So I'm just curious as to what the water usage looks like in the city of Salem today versus the 1980s.
Yeah, so in the back in the 60s and 70s, we've got data that shows we were using about 6 million gallons of water a day. And when you compare that to the 2000s, early 2000s, the usage was about 5.5 million gallons a day in that period. And then more recently, predominantly from the power plant changing and getting rehabilitated to use less water, we've seen that reduced overall to close to 4 million gallons a day. So the overall water use we've seen has been going down over time, and that's attributable to the power plants, but it's also attributable to the leak detection that we do. We're aggressively checking leaks. We're listening all the time at night to identify leaks and responding to them. We also have a new meter reading system that we installed about almost 10 years ago, but it gives us readings in the central office of water use every day from every meter in the city. And previously, with the older system, we were getting reads quarterly. So every 4 months we would go out and we would take a reading. We'd go outside to the house to a pad that was there, and we would put a device on that and take the reading and bring that in. So we're able to now get daily consumption reading from each house and building that's out there. And what we do is periodically we'll go through that and we'll get alerts for continued water use. And if we look at a period of 30 days and we see that there's continuous water use where, typically in the middle of the night, people are sleeping, so the water use should go drastically down. But if we see a continuous use of that, it typically signifies a leak, which could be a leaky toilet or something in the plumbing. Leaky toilets, you really don't know and see, and you really can't hear them, but they can be significant and be a significant amount of water use. So we've actually gone to the lengths of identifying those properties that have continuous water use. We send letters to them saying that we've been seeing the continuous use, and we recommend that they hire a plumber to check all their faucets and their sinks and toilets to see if they're leaking. So I think a lot of those things kind of contribute to the reduction in overall water use. We also have been pushing water conservation efforts. We've been giving out for years, we've been giving out low flow shower heads, which sometimes aren't popular with folks, but if you reduce the amount of water coming through the shower, that can reduce the amount of water that you use. We've seen a big rise over the last 10 years in low flow toilets. Now, I don't think you can not buy a low flow flow toilet at Home Depot anymore. They're all low flow. We also have provided nozzles for outside water use that are low flow as well. So it's a combination of things that have seen a reduction in the water use over time.
That's helpful. Thank you. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Hapworth. Hello, Mr. Knowlton.
Good evening.
I had a couple of comments and then something I'll say for after questions, suggestion. While I was working for Mr. Knowlton, I had a breach of a sewer pipe. And so I'm talking from personal experience. It ended up being a tree root. And there's also which I was responsible for, people are responsible for their sewer pipe. There's also an issue on Leach Street, which is in Ward 5, and I've been in contact with Ray Joden, who's been terrific, interacting with the residents. And maybe you could speak a little bit to that situation, because I think it's indicative of what may happen to some people. There was a water main break around Leach Street, and because of the weather, because of the cold weather, the city isn't able to do a full paving right now. So they're only able to patch the area, and the residents are aware that it may not all be the flooding that they've had in their basement due to the water main break. But if you could, Dave, talk about issues that you have with cold weather, and that not all the flooding that affects people's basements is from water mains.
Yeah, groundwater is certainly a contributor to basement flooding. There are a lot of sump pumps in Salem in lower areas, especially down along the coast in the Leach Street area. We have seen an extraordinary amount of rain this year that keeps coming. We keep getting precipitation. We know there's high groundwater throughout the city. You can go down any street on a dry day and you can see that the groundwater breaks out in the curbs, the sidewalks, the water finds the path of least resistance, and it'll pop out onto the pavement and run down the street and head into a storm drain. Paving in the winter is not ideal. You don't get the quality that we like to see when the weather is warmer. Pavement itself is more difficult to get. It's more expensive in the winter. All the plants aren't open. We do have a hot box that we send out to address potholes and trenches. Every time we dig, the Water and Sewer Division digs on a water break or a service break, the Street Division is following right behind them to restore the roadway. And in the wintertime, some of those repairs aren't ideal. And so we do follow up in the spring to make sure that we get the correct and proper repair of the roadway. I hope that answers your question. I could talk about the ownership and responsibilities of water and sewer services. You know, the city ordinances are fairly clear about that. I'm not sure everybody understands it, though. All the residents, sometimes, you know, we have to educate them, but basically the ordinances state that residences are responsible for their sewer pipe and their water pipe from the building. Obviously, inside their building is their responsibility, but from the building out to the street and the connection at the main to the main sewer or the water pipe that's there. A lot of times there are older services, whether it's sewer or water, that age and fail, much like our main system in the street. We try to communicate that as quickly as we can to the homeowner, that they have to get a contractor to come pull a permit in engineering and then make the repairs. Trees are an issue. We get a lot of, I don't want to say pushback, but we get a lot of questioning where, you know, the city's installed a tree maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and the tree roots have gotten into the sewer service, because trees and roots, they like to find water, and there's certainly a water source in the sewer services leaving houses. Some of the pipes are old, they're vitrified clay services, and the joints aren't really tight, so the tree roots get in there. And unfortunately, it's still the homeowner's responsibility to take care of that. We try and work with them. There are contractors out there that can potentially slip a new sewer service pipe into the existing pipe to reestablish that and get through the roots. But sometimes, you know, a contractor is needed to either remove the tree or dig down next to it and try to protect the tree and replace the pipe and make that repair.
Councilor Cohen, did you have any other follow-up questions?
I have a suggestion. It's a little bit outside of the box, and I'd be glad to talk to Dave about it sometime. In 2015, so this is not about water main breaks specifically, but maybe a way to save the city some money and do something kind of innovative, if it's possible in Salem. Portland, Oregon in 2015 started when they were replacing or fixing water pipes, installing turbines in the pipes, which would take advantage of both gravity flow and, you know, we have a lot of pump stations in Salem. And it was pretty significant. The cost was 1.7 million. And in 2.5 years, it produced over $2 million of electricity, 1.1 megawatts of electricity, which is enough to power 150 homes, average electric use. So I know it wasn't what we were specifically meeting on today, but if you want, Dave, I could send you an article about what they did, and maybe it's something that we could think about for a long-term future as a way of, you know, maybe conquering two things at the same time.
Well, yeah, please forward that on to me, Jeff, and we can talk about it. In my previous life, I was a consulting engineer. I was on the West Coast for a period of time, and they have all kinds of water supply issues. And we were actually, one of the tests I had was to go to Utah, Salt Lake City, where they have all these mountains, and they were capturing the stormwater coming off the mountains, and through that gravity flow, they were interested in putting turbines in, and they had installed those, and I think they were quite successful. It all depends on the situation and what the application is, I guess. But I'm happy to talk more about that.
Any other, Councilor Prosnowski?
I'm not sure if I'm out of order because I'm not a member of the committee, Mr. Chairman. Is there
It's co-posted with the committee of the whole. You're okay.
Okay. First of all, David, I want to tip my hat to you and your crew for what you do for the city when a water break does occur. I think we've all seen the crews in action, and it seems to happen during the coldest days of the winter time when there's a water break, and and they're digging holes. They're in the holes in sub-zero temperature. I shake my head. My hat's off. To those men and women that are out there, because it's really tough going, and they do it. So we've got a committed crew that does a great job, because I've seen it in action. My question, David, well, actually there's two questions. I believe there's a GIS layer that shows the water mains throughout the city streets. Is that a GIS letter that's available to the public, or available to us if we wanted to see where the water mains were in our city or in our wards, where they're located?
Yeah, I believe that is. I believe that's available. I can check. I know it's available to me. I have access to all the GIS, and we do map where the breaks occur. That kind of helps us with our overall monitoring of the pipes and the problem areas. I think there's a portion of that that's available for the public, but I can check on that and get back to you, Conrad.
That would be great. And the second part of that is there any one part of the city more than another that concerns you? Is there like a section where the pipes are more older or more brittle, something that you've got on your radar that should be watched more closely, or you think is going to fail in the future?
Well, I think we took care of two of the bigger ones when we lined the pipe on Highland Ave, because that was just problematic. It was happening too often, and it was affecting a large group of residents and businesses. Same thing with the Loring Ave pipe. We have a 16-inch pipe that goes down from South Salem down into the Vinton Square area, and there's some really high properties there down at Loring Hills, the high rise that's there. It's like, I think there's 6 or 7 floors there, and so they're at the end of the system, so they don't get the best pressure. So when we have a problem with that 16-inch main that feeds that area, there's a pressure drop. But I think we've addressed that. We're always looking. I don't think there's an area we can point to that say this is a really bad area, or that is worse than this. It's really just kind of understanding the data, understanding where we've been, and figuring out where we need to be to minimize those things in the future. And the areas that I mentioned before, Horton Street is something that we want to address soon. Also Broadway, there's been a lot of breaks out there, and we want to replace those pipes as soon as possible. So that's in the works right now.
So I can assume that most of the older pipes in the older sections of the city have already been replaced. Yep. We don't have any more wooden pipes out there, do we?
Well, we still find them. I don't think they're active, but we just found some on Bridge Street where we were doing that MassWorks job from Flint to Boston. We found a length of about I think it was like 80 feet of wooden pipe that garnished a lot of interest from the Waterworks Association of New England. They came up and they took some pipe, and sections of our pipe, they put it down in the museum that's in Cambridge, Mass. The Water Board up in North Beverly, they have a lot of our wooden pipe up there that's on display. And some of just the older hydrants that we had, the Lowry hydrants that were all underground, where you would come in. It's a fitting that was underground. You'd pop off the cover, drop a hydrant on it, connect it, and then that would be your water source. We have a lot of those that are still out there. We find them, we replace them, take them out. We're not hunting for them, but when we find them, we take them out. But a lot of history with Salem. After the Great Fire, before the Great Fire, we were just relying on a single standpipe up at it's called Chapman Hill up in North Beverly, and that quickly drained when we had the Great Fire, and we were without water. And I think that was part of the devastation of that fire. In response to that, it's really fascinating. There was kind of a who's who of engineers and future engineering companies that were brought in to look at the Salem and Beverly water system, and out of that, we had Metcalf and Eddy was a big engineering firm back in the 60s and 70s. When the Great Fire happened, Metcalf and Eddy hadn't formed Metcalf and Eddy yet, but they were MIT professors, but they were part of the planning that was involved in creating the supply system to Salem. Hazen and Sawyer is another big engineering firm. Hazen and Sawyer were part of that as well. So it's kind of a who's who of up and coming engineers at the time that really have established themselves over a period of time. And our transmission system from the treatment plant in Beverly is really well engineered and well maintained, I like to say, so that we always have that water. We have 3 ways of water getting into the city of Salem. There's a 20-inch main that comes across the Salem Beverly Bridge that comes through Beverly. We also have a 36-inch main that comes across the Danvers River and the Kernwood Golf Course, and that connects into the city of Salem. And then there's also a 30-inch pipe that comes down North Street from Salem. So we have the ability to manage the way the water comes into the system. We have a 10 million gallon storage tank in Danvers at the Folly Hill location. And we also have that 5 million gallon tank that's in Gallows Hill, which are key to providing water. We don't have any concerns with the amount of water that the city of Salem is going to get. In fact, we've not met our withdrawal rates from the reservoirs that the water board manages up in Beverly, the Wenham Lake, and this Putnam Mill Reservoir, and there's another reservoir that's there. That's really well managed, and we have plenty of water to the benefit, I think, of the residents of Salem. You know, we've never been in a water restriction where communities around us, as soon as you get to April 1st, you know, they take water directly out of the Ipswich River constantly for their water supply. They're automatically in water restrictions where you can't, they limit outdoor water use, watering of lawns, things like that. The city of Salem and with Beverly want to promote water conservation. We want people to be smart about it. You know, we have water, but we don't want to be water gluttons. We want to do our share. The way we take water out of the Ipswich River is that we only pump into our reservoir systems in the wintertime when there's a certain elevation of water in the river, so that we know that we're not going to affect the water quality and the amount of water that goes in the Ipswich River. That's only done in the wintertime from December to April. And then we store the water that we need for the rest of the year. And depending on the amount of rainfall we get and the amount of water we pump from the Ipswich, we're always, you know, in the springtime, we're always really full. We're at 98, 99% capacity. And then depending on how much we use, by the end of the year, when we get to December, you know, we're down around the 80 to 75% range. So we stay in a really safe operating range. And I think that's a tribute to the water board, the way they maintain the reservoir system and, you know, the residents and of both Salem and Beverly to manage that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good time. Thank you.
I think one of the best things I've learned tonight is there's a water pipe museum somewhere up there. Councilor McLean, I think you had a question. You've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Dave, for being here tonight. Appreciate the work that you and your team do to keep this vital service going for the people in our city, and it absolutely is vital. I have a few questions, if you'll indulge me a little bit. One of the things I wanted to ask you was about the expected rate of failure for our water system. Knowing that the numbers have come down over time, do you have a sense, based on some of the factors that you mentioned, relative to age of materials, where they're located, how much do you expect to break on sort of a year-to-year basis or a general trend?
We've been, you know, recently we've been, you know, 50 breaks a year. A couple of years we've been up in the high 60s, and we've been in the low 40s. It really depends on the weather conditions and the functionality of the pipe that's out there. You know, it's hard to predict. There are firms that are out there that are using artificial intelligence, the AI, to kind of predict where the most vulnerable spots are. We haven't got to that point yet. We still think we kind of know our system, and we know, you know, where the issues are, and we can respond in that fashion. But it would be hard for me to say, you know, is that a 50 or 60 break year? Is that average? Probably in that range.
Are there areas or sections of the system that are currently sort of listed as priorities for the next round of CIP work?
Yes, the Horton Street is high on our list right now. That's a section of road off of Jefferson Ave in Ward 3. And then there's also the Ward 5 section on Broadway that's had multiple leaks, and we want to address those. And then, you know, as we go, we annually kind of look at all the data and plan what we want to do for the following year. So those are really the two areas that I'm focused on right now.
Okay. I want to ask you a little bit more about the impact of development, because it's something that I do hear from my residents about, particularly referencing that section of Highland Avenue that's come up a couple of times, the Mooney Road area. That's part of my ward, and there's been some additional housing being developed up at the top of that hill in recent years. So I wonder if any of your current monitoring efforts include the impact of water, the impact of development on water pressure, that is, and in particular, if you saw any difference in the behavior of the mains in that area prior to sort of the work that went on in that area.
When developments come in, it's a typical standard process procedure for them to do fire hydrant flow tests, which will in the area on our mains. And those basically will tell us what the static pressure is and what the available volume is when the fire hydrant's flowing. So every development that comes into Salem, one of their initial things is to do fire hydrant flow tests. And they tell us that the main that they want to connect to has the pressure and has the volume that their property or their development needs. So that's one of the very early things that we do. It's one of our requirements. So we try and catch any of those things beforehand. If there is deficiencies, then we would ask the developer to identify what improvements they could make, whether it's a larger pipe in a certain section, a different connection, to rectify that and provide that minimum standard that we want to provide. That whole area of Mooney, basically from the high pressure zone, we have a pump station on Highland Ave right near the school. And that pressurizes everything south to the Lynn line. That includes all of Witchcraft Heights. It includes, you know, the Ravina, Barcelona area, also Barnes Road, the First and Traders Way area, and then everything out along Marlborough Road as well. So that's important. We monitor that pump station. The pump station provides the pressure for that area. Typically, it's in the high range. It's in the 80 psi range. So there's plenty of water in that area. Throughout the city, the rest of the city functions on the elevation of the water that's in the Gallows Hill tank. So depending on where the development is in topographical relation to the tank, the higher the elevation and the closer the elevation of those proposed development to the water tank, the pressures could be lower. So we monitor that. Obviously, when you get to the lower elevations down near the coast, you've got a higher elevation difference. So you get the pressure, you get plenty of pressure there. That pressure around the remaining part of the city can be anywhere from 40 or 50 psi up to the 60 or 70. But certainly the high pressure zone from Highland Ave in either direction is up in that 80 psi range.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the education about the tank. I didn't realize the way we were managing using that reservoir system. It's actually really interesting and informative. My very last question is a sort of a simple one. Do you have a sense of what portions of the system are simply past their sort of expected end of life, or are approaching their end of life and may need to be replaced in, you know, the next decade, kind of thing, to pick a number?
Well, I think we need to address the booster station on Highland Ave that was last improved, I think, in the it was in the 60s, where new pumps and piping was installed. That's getting tired. It's working. It's fine. We monitor it on a daily basis. We have SCADA that monitors the pressures and the volumes that go through there. But I think that's something we're going to need to address in the next 10 years. Also, we have a main pump station up at the water board where, the water board treats the water, puts the water for both Salem and Beverly into a common clear well, and both communities pump out of that. So if you can imagine that, that's kind of the main source of water for the city. And we're constantly monitoring that. We're replacing pumps, we're replacing standby generators, things like that, electrical systems, to make sure that that's reliable out there. We do have storage in our reservoirs. We've got 15 million gallons of storage, and if we're using 4 or 5 million gallons a day, we've got about three days worth of water that we don't have to pump. It would just be running on the system. And we really, we don't anticipate any outages or anything more than the 3 days. So, we want to have that reserved water available for us, and we think we do. We have a safe amount to be used. And then it's just the continuous leak detection in the system. Excuse me. Just monitoring the system and seeing how it's acting. There's certainly more cleaning and lining we could do on some of the unlined cast iron mains that we have. That helps the flow of water going through those pipes, increases the capacity of those pipes. So there's all kinds of little things that we do on a daily basis that give us that comfort level that we're going to be able to function over the next 10 years, 15 years.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Councilor Varela.
Thank you, Chair Hepworth. Thank you, David, for being here. My question is about when you guys replace the cast iron mains, are you guys going to polyvinyl, or are you replacing with just cast iron as it was intended?
No, we don't install cast iron anymore. We use, typically it's cement line ductile iron pipe, which is a lot more flexible. The joint systems are a lot more user-friendly. That allows the pipes to move a little bit more. Cast iron pipes typically have just leaded joints, which is very don't have much movement to them. You can imagine you're putting cast iron lead around those joints, putting those together. There's not much flexibility in there. So we do replace with ductile iron, which is a much better pipe. And in some cases, we do use plastic pipe. We did use plastic pipe down on Bridge Street in that area along the North River, just because there's so much tidal influence there. It made sense to do that. There's a lot of drains that go through there. The groundwater rises with the tides, and a lot of those, that's saltwater intrusion. So we have used that. So we're selective with that. It's a little bit more expensive to put the plastic pipe in, but sometimes that makes sense to do that and use it.
Awesome. And then my follow-up question to that is, since we do have our harder water here, definitely a lot of calcium, magnesium as far as in our water. Do you see any, sense in the next 20, 30 years with the replacement of, not doing cast iron, but these other materials, any, mitigating factors we might need to look down the line as far as, replacing the pipes we're replacing now? Or do you feel like those, the new, technology we're using, we shouldn't have any issues?
Yeah.
Aligners.
Good question. I don't think we're going to have issues with the pipe that we're using. We typically get 50 years, maybe longer, out of the pipes that we install now. The water board is doing a really good job treating the water and making sure that we don't get fluctuations in the chemistry of the water, because that can affect things. There is a lot of work to be done at the water board at the treatment plant. They're starting to put together a capital improvement plan to start to upgrade the treatment plant. It's been running the same way for a long time, and it needs to be upgraded from the electrical systems to the pumping systems, to HVAC, to the treatment systems, things like that, how they take residuals out. But there's a very talented team up there that's in place to take us through to the next 50 to 100 years for sure, to make sure we have good, safe drinking water.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions for Dave before we wrap up? Councilor Morcillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Dave, for being here. I'll start by saying that my residence was one of the ones who got one of those notices about a drip in a sink. It turned out to be a very, very slow drip, but it was picked up by whatever systems you're using. So thank you. Second, I wanted to talk about the notification system that you use for the residents. I think you do a great job of communicating, and especially when you send us emails when there is a water main break in our ward, and we can get information out to constituents. And especially, by the way, the estimated time, which is always much longer than it takes, but it's nice to have that that leeway. The complaints that I've gotten are usually when the break happens overnight, or in the very, very early morning hours, or on a weekend. And I know 100% that somebody's got to be in that office to make those calls. But I was just curious and first of all, you can tell me if that's what the system is, if somebody has to actually manually go in and pick streets to send phone calls to. And if that's the case, is there any plan to make that more automated, to set up zones or something where you can just push a button and send the message out instead of having somebody in the office that needs to do that process?
Yeah, it's the code red is what
Yeah.
about, yeah, and that's a pretty sophisticated system. Obviously, the citywide messages are much easier to do.
Yeah.
But with the water break, we want to be specific. We want to try and we don't want to panic everyone. We want to let the folks know who are impacted by the break, who have lost water.
Yeah.
When that occurs, and we certainly want to get that brown water call out to folks. So it's a little more, it's not as easy as creating zones. We try to be specific and anticipate where we think the brown water is going to go. So it does take, the code red system does allow you to kind of draw a GIS map around the area, and then all those, whoever signed up gets auto-populated for the call. So we take advantage of that. We are doing our best to have people in the office when we have issues, and so that we can respond. Sometimes overnight and weekends can be a challenge, but we're bringing those folks in, kind of like when we do with snow emergencies. We want to have somebody in the office to take calls so people can talk and directly to someone. If your residents have concerns, I think after hours, the best way to get information to us is to go through the police department, have them call the non-emergency number at the police department, and then believe it or not, they know how to get in touch with either myself or Ray. We get the calls, and then we can start to bring crews in to help with the response. So I think that's kind of the best way to go.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. I remember going back and forth with somebody who was annoyed that they didn't know at like 6 in the morning. I said, well, I'm not sure if everyone in that area getting a call at 5 in the morning when the break happened would be a welcome thing. I don't know. It's one of those issues that it's hard to figure out when the best time is to send out the call. And it's also better to have the focus on people fixing the pipes than sending someone in to do the phone call, I guess. Priorities, I guess. But I didn't know whether there was a better way to automate that system to help out. But
yeah, I mean, previously we were relying on Ellen Talkowski in the engineering department to do the code red calls, and she was great. But it got to a point where she had too many other things that she was doing. So we've kind of transitioned that to doing all of the calls from here at DPW. So we're working on that, and we're trying to get better at that. We'll get better on it. There's always ways to improve things that we can do better. So we can make that a priority as we go forward. Having somebody in the office, getting that information out as soon as possible.
all right, thank you.
If you're ever wondering who does something in the city, it's always Ellen or Dave, it seems like. Jake, one more set of questions from Councillor Watson-Fellow.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for being here. I just a quick shout out to David Knowlton for and his crew for helping out some constituents just this last weekend who had an issue with their water meter, which caused a lack of water in their house. And to David's point, that I had no idea that you could go through the police department. So my suggestion or my question, I guess, would be, is there a way, it sounds like your communication and notification process to the neighbors that are directly affected by breaks is really great. It's really spot on. And I'm wondering if there's more public awareness about what your process or notification process is, specifically on those off hours. You know, I don't know that this contacting the police department is even on the website or anything, that there's any instructions about that for the public. So just a suggestion that maybe we go a little bit broader with the notifications or public awareness around how to solve off hours problems. Because I do agree with what everyone else has said, which is that your notification system is pretty amazing when you guys are handling a break, and your turnaround time is really effective. But just, it's even almost like more of the little things, right? How do we get help off hours? So thanks again for all you do, and thanks for your help this last weekend. Thanks.
Good point. We can make that, give that a larger presence on the website so that people know how to get that communication going.
This Councilor Varela's hand is still up. Is that, did you intend to? Okay. Okay, well, I want to thank Dave. That was very, very informative for a lot of us, and this has certainly been a topic of conversation for a long time. And I just appreciate the the honest conversation around that. If there's no other questions for Dave, I'll take a first motion, and that motion could be to discharge this from committee, unless there's a different idea.
I'll make that motion, Chairperson Hapworth.
Councilor Watson-Felt,
Second.
motion to discharge this from committee, seconded by Councilor Cohen. We'll do a roll call vote. So Councilor Watson-Felt,
Yes.
Councilor McLean,
Yes.
Councilor Varela,
Yes.
Councilor Cohen,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that's 5 councilors voting, 5 in the affirmative. I'll take one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor Varela motions to adjourn. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're
Thanks,
welcome. Thank you.
David.